it would not surprise me that we would start looking at processors as like, this was the brains of our forefathers, and it is like a magical artifact to them. That would not surprise me at all. Like 1,000 years into the future. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. Okay, sure.
Yeah,
but
see,
I want to like ask you like a question, like,
you can
so
look
just like
inside of a
to
regular
understand
printer.
like where you're coming from.
I want to get this line of thinking. So you're insinuating that so one, how are you going to destroy like say like digital copies of like books, right?
The zeros
Because
and
keep in mind
ones
that
will
once when
erode.
something is digitally copied, it is instrumentally hard to get rid of.
The zeros
That
and
means you
ones
gotta
will
have to search
erode.
for-
Eventually, all people will forget how to make processors. They will
Okay,
forget
wait.
how to read the zeros and ones. The algorithms will be lost to time.
That doesn't make any sense because
Of course it does.
like, can you actually provide any sort of like level? Like, can you
Yeah,
actually provide
there's like
any sort of
hashes and
observable
algorithms
evidence in the
required
past?
in order to read the zeros and ones into something that is comprehensible. Those would be lost to time. In fact, most people aren't even aware that to be a thing, right? Like if the very tiny amount of people who understand that and build those things suddenly disappeared, we'd be screwed, right?
Yeah,
Within about
that's- yeah,
20
but-
years, there would just be none of this left. Like all of the information would be lost.
the crux. Yeah, but that's a big crux of your problem, though, is that you're now insistent that these people will eventually disappear, and because they'll disappear, so therefore all of our digital
eventually. I mean,
copies
if we keep pushing
the problem
towards
with that
the
is what
ignorance of our
Socrates-
society, if we keep pushing
Wait,
towards
the-
the ignorance of our society, and the de-education, as it will, in Western society, then yes, we would go down that route.
Socrates has said, though, is that we can rewrite those science books. We can
Yes,
so if we can
but
rewrite
not the zero and ones algorithms. You may actually have a completely different way on how to go about storing data and information.
That doesn't make any sense, though, because a lot of
not?
algorithms is based on different math calculations. Like by repeating the same math calculations, you would have the same variable end result.
Nope. We have characters that are stored in zeros and ones that then are able to store into hex algorithms, which are universally understood, which are already built into your operating system, which could therefore be forgotten.
Can you provide any sort of study on this?
I don't need to provide you a study. I could show you how that works.
Okay, so you're making a claim, but when I'm asking for evidence of that claim, you don't want to provide evidence of your claim.
Well,
Hold on. If language, wait, Mender, I want to ask.
So I'm checking your website, right? Or not your website. I'm checking your YouTube channel, and you yourself said that you like to make logic-based arguments. So here I am. I'm asking for evidence from your logical endpoint, and you are refusing to provide said evidence, which sounds kind of illogical.
Okay, so take for example the colors that we have like coming from our screen, right? It's ultimately coming down into like a hex code, which is based on a number between 0 and 255 that is also translated from hexadecimal notation. For example, if we wanted to have black, it would be 00 for red, 00 for blue, and 00 for green, which would denote nothing, which is black. But if we're talking about a hexadecimal notation for white, it's going to be the max value of white, or 255. So it would be FF for red, FF for blue, FF for green. That denotes white. And it is possible that in the future these algorithms are lost. And so what would a hexadecimal notation look like on a hard drive? Well, we would observe these zeros and ones and not understand the connection of a hexadecimal notation, and then also ultimately reads out into a color. Now, mind you, I'm just talking about a color, let alone like like the actual instructions that we send, say, a processor. I mean, it is completely possible that we just completely lose all of this, and therefore all of the old information is just lost. It would be lost to time. Here, I'll go ahead and provide so you could see on the stream what I'm talking about. So here's an example of hexadecimal octets translated into, human characters, but ultimately what it outputs into your octets on a hard drive.
Wait, why are we? Wait, you just said that you're talking about binary. Why you're switching to quantum computing?
This isn't quantum computing. This is just how data is stored on your hard drive.
Indicator to describe quantum computing.
I did not describe quantum computing at all. All I did
by using
was
octets, you are talking about quantum computing.
No, there are octets in regular computing. You do not need quantum computing to talk about an octet. Octet just means 8. That's it. It's like it's a data source that's just 8.
This side quest kind of
please. Like I learned this in high school IT class. Like, please, are we really debating this? Like, come on.
I'm acting.
This was about religion, right?
I'm acting like an idiot right now. I did not realize that. Right. I apologize. I can at least admit when I'm wrong. Unlike, I guess, First Amender.
So
First Amender has admitted that he's wrong before. I've seen it myself.
All right, so you could see right here, here's like a series of encoding schemes that specifically denote very particular characters. And I mean, to me, the problem is that what happens if like this kind of information just disappears and all we have is the leftover hard drives? Like, we don't have processors, we don't have RAM. All we have is that we can read the hard drives themselves and observe zeros and ones. It would be incomprehensible to the future.
Amender.
That is scary. It's terrifying.
Wait, I want to ask you real quick,
Amender. Everything in this whole planet is going to end up in a black hole one day.
By the way, if you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing right now. I'm a really small YouTuber and I'm really just trying to build up. And I really think that I'm going to be making more content and you're going to just see not just debates, but as well as content like this. So stay tuned to find out.
There's no way around it.
Real quick, wait.
It's all going to be gone.
It's this repeat insistence that people are just going to randomly disappear. It's the rapture when it comes to x86 or ARM or any of this sort of processing.
If things
it doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, so this has happened before in the past. If things aren't taught, then it's forgotten. I mean, this happened during the Dark Ages where, people became illiterate. I mean, they went from largely literate to most people were illiterate, which resulted in, the spread of disease and, just overall quality of living declining substantially. I mean, I guess humans survived, but it's like they looked back at Roman times as like, okay, these were like the ancients who knew more than us. And like I see no reason why that couldn't happen in the future, right? Like, we're at a very, very high point in human life.
Approaching a singularity.
It is totally possible that all of this collapses and everybody unlearns everything, right? Like, what is the possibility that people just completely forget calculus? I would say very high, right? If people don't spend the time.
May I say, people forgot what tariffs were.
Really buy this, like I said, right? This doomsday scenario, because people, there are people who enjoy doing math. It's not like people are going to magically just suddenly just decide to be like,
I got news for you, man. Most people don't enjoy doing math, and we have in the past lost that information.
Theorem, right? The
math is actually illegal, Amender.
Wait, hold on. So you mentioned the Pythagorean theorem. The Pythagorean theorem has managed to survive.
Pythagorean theorem?
Yeah.
Well, look,
there's
probably going to be some amount of knowledge given some events that is just lost, right? I'm sure there's knowledge that were lost when Germany was firebombed.
Everything will be lost. So that's the problem. Is that he is insistent that
I'm not saying absolutely everything. I'm saying that we could lose the information, and go back by hundreds, if not thousands, of years. It's totally possible.
No.
Yeah, I think that is possible. That is possible.
That's like,
I mean,
dude,
we went
have
back
so-
1,000.
so
We
many
went back
records.
1,000 when during the Dark Ages, people forgot how to read, dude.
No,
Wait,
Amender.
Amanda, come on.
No,
Well, some
Amender,
people
no.
were still reading.
Some
okay,
were,
me
but
and
most
somebody-
That's a
weren't.
misconception.
Whereas,
Wait, that's a
whereas
myth.
in Roman
That's a
times, most people
misconception.
knew how to read.
Okay, wait, first a minute. Do you know what the Dark Ages mean and what they actually meant? Do you actually think that like humanity went back 1,000 years?
Yeah, I mean,
I
in
think you
terms
have
of
to
quality
read
of
it.
living standard, yeah, 100%.
Amender,
things were
Amender,
awful.
Well, I don't know if
Okay, so-
1,000, but like they definitely took a nosedive after Rome a little bit, right?
All right, maybe not 1,000,
Western
700. Like, what does this
Specifically
matter?
Western
No,
Europe.
not even close.
You know,
Okay,
like,
so
look at
it's like
800
Dark
like-
Age-
like
it's
900
Dark Age
AD
thing. It's like-
Because Amender,
Or
the
500
claim isn't
AD
necessarily
comparison
right
to
because
like the 1500s. Like, huge difference in
other
quality of
societies
living
still
standard.
existed. Yeah, but other
No,
societies,
that's-
that was mainly in Western Europe though, and other
That's not
societies still
true.
existed, like in China and
Yeah.
India, for example.
Sure,
and
but
Egypt.
I
You're
feel
look-
like
you're
we could
looking at
acknowledge,
the
like,
Eastern Roman
in a
Empire
vacuum,
survived
the
up
West.
until almost the modern day.
but we can
Well, I
acknowledge
mean,
like in a vacuum, the West went downward, like between
Oh, sure, sure.
say
You're looking-
500
you're
AD
looking at
to
one place.
1500. I mean, come on, really?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can see this. Like in England, for example, after the Romans were gone, literacy died out within a generation, which is crazy to think about because all that knowledge and progress that the people of England at the time made is just lost. It's gone,
Yeah.
right? And now
It's
they're
like
back to
really,
how
like,
they used to
push
live
back
prior to
on this,
Roman
like, whole
times.
idea.
But-
It's like
but-
the idea of like these Dark Ages, like they're like non-existent. Like you can go like to any like actual like historian, like ask them about like the Dark Ages, and they will immediately like clarify like that like the quote unquote like Dark Ages that people think what it is, like that's not actually what happened.
What
I mean, it's
do you
just
think
like
happened?
There's like some setbacks, sure, like in some
Was
like
knowledge?
like
I'm sorry.
localized-
Was knowledge not lost?
what knowledge
Some
was
was,
lost?
but
What?
this was mainly in Western Europe that was affected.
Like, I don't
It
know,
was
the
mainly
Library of
class.
Alexandria, for example.
That's all. No, Amender, no.
Huge
You're
amount of
subscribing-
knowledge
you're
lost there.
subscribing
You're
to, You're
literally-
subscribing to too many popular science myths, Amender. No.
You are
What?
literally playing
No.
the meme
The
right now.
Library of Alexandria.
The
that
Library
was
of Alexandria has been burned down several
way
times
later.
throughout history.
Of
I will
Way
say.
later.
Is a
Yeah,
The
very
burning
classic
down
example.
was way later.
As
But
not only
people-
that, the Library of Baghdad also had a 70% replication of the Library of Alexandria because the different imams of Baghdad really enjoyed reading the works from there, so they requested
But
like
it was
But
collecting
he's
of
not.
books.
He's not.
But that
completely
doesn't. That's
wrong.
not the same
He's
as
not-
saying though that like
he
there
is
weren't
not
other
completely
societies
wrong.
around the world that were still just fine. I mean,
Well, sorry,
China
but
was
he's
fine throughout the entirety of the Dark Ages.
Yeah,
apart
he's
from
not
maybe
completely
some
wrong. We have
genocidal
a big
emperors, I
difference
guess.
between the Middle Ages and the Antique
Okay.
time. In the Antique time, like nearly every Roman was capable of reading and writing and basic
No,
mathematical.
that's not true. No, even
Okay,
that is not true.
Stop for a
That's
second.
like-
I am not wrong when I'm playing this out, but I think I know what you're trying to get at, right? Like, it is true that there were tons and tons of literary works completely lost to history, right? Poems, history, philosophies from Greek and Roman authors, right? They were lost because either they were no longer copied or they were just not valued. We could look at like, there's tons and tons of works by authors like, I don't know, Sophocles and Livy, right? Those are just basically names and fragments. We don't have anything regarding those things. We lost the Roman engineering. We lost their architecture knowledge.
No.
We lost
No,
medicine.
we did not.
No.
Concrete formulas like city
No.
planning
No.
techniques, plumbing knowledge.
No.
These were not maintained. I'm not crazy in thinking that.
The
Like, dude,
Eastern
why
Roman
do you think
Empire
the Gothic
survived.
architecture was even a thing?
That's
Eastern-
like, I was
the
gonna
Eastern
say- I was
Roman
gonna
Empire
wait till you were
survived,
done
Amender.
that the Penguin brought that
Okay,
up,
it's fair to say that there
the-
wasn't a dark age everywhere, but it is true that the Roman engineering, like these giant buildings, were lost. This is why it was so hard for people to build like large castles, because it was like it would just collapse, and we didn't understand how to actually maintain it. It took literally our understanding of Gothic architecture, where we started putting in like archways and stuff to where we can actually build large things. But we needed to relearn
That's
that.
not true.
That wasn't a thing back then.
Literally not true.
That is true.
Amender, you're like grossly oversimplifying like a lot of basic engineering and construction. It's not
Yeah, I was trying to say,
it's not like
because
during the Dark
wasn't-
Ages. It's not like they just suddenly forgot everything. People still retain that, especially like in the Eastern Roman Empire, for example. It's not like they just forgot everything. It's mainly that the practicality of using those techniques fell out of favor because it wasn't practical to build aqueducts when you didn't have millions of people living in cities anymore, because hey, a lot of them ended up leaving the cities after the collapse of the Western Roman Empire.
So
Also about like the literacy rates, like I don't know who brought it up, like about like the Romans being like so literate. Can you like point me to like any like number of like the literacy rate like in like Rome? It was like 5% or whatever. Was that like super high or whatever? It's like I don't know.
I was going to say that you got to keep in mind is that the Romans had a common law in like inscription, just so that way the leaders of the common people, i.e., like the assembly, can read the laws out loud to the people.
The Romans like their literacy rate was like a little bit high. And was like back like
around
almost
50%. So-
it's not that crazy.
So, okay, hold on. So, for the time, it is fair to say that the Roman Empire, among certain classes, like elites, administrators, merchants, soldiers, they had literacy,
soldiers.
right? It is also true that there are tons of people in cities.
Soldiers were not literate.
Tons of people in cities, right? They could read. They could read Latin or Greek, especially in civic and legal and commercial purposes. Yes. What do you mean? What do you mean? There's notations.
Your fucking average mercenary, probably not. But like, if you're talking about an officer, probably, because they receive their orders written.
So after the 5th century, right after the collapse, it is fair to say that infrastructure declined. Literacy that was concentrated among the church, right? Outside of the church or elite circles, right? Literacy just completely plummeted, right? Peasants, rural folks, they could not read or write, right? Even among nobility, literacy was not guaranteed.
I mean, in Byzantium is.
I'll agree with you. Byzantine Empire, fair enough. Right,
to people that are more concerned with eating and farming, it's not like having these skills is really useful to them.
And also, the only point that all I was just mentioning, the only point why I even brought this up is because yes, it is possible for us to take a nosedive backward. Right, this is an example of us taking a nosedive backward.
We know that a certain knowledge was lost after the antique time.
Yes, that's all my point was.
No, don't get me wrong. We all relatively agree here. We all.
You guys are telling me that I was so wrong, and now I'm like clarifying.
Okay, you were wrong. Okay, to a lot of us, it looked like you were arguing as if like across all of the world it was the Dark Ages.
No.
It was the repeat insistence that this was all going, like everything that we have accumulated, like say, like for example, even doing stuff that like risk arm processing, right? By the way, which is very simple to do even for someone who's getting into computing for the first time. You're more or less inferring that's all that is just going to disappear, right? There's going to be no more like casual.
It's not exactly like common knowledge how processors are built. That is subject to like less than like very, very few people. I don't know the exact number, but very, very few people in the world know how to make a processor. That's an extremely tiny margin of people, but it is super necessary for our society to function.
I know how to do it.
Do you really?
I want to go back to this though, because
if
I
you
don't
can.
like first man to weasel out of this, because his claim was it was like a huge setback, like almost 1,000 years, and then he went back to it's like maybe a little bit of knowledge was lost, and then so just like. Please acknowledge that you're wrong.
I mean, I think
wrong about what?
I think a Mindred.
That you said there was like a setback of almost 1,000 years.
Yeah, you did say.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And I said, okay, maybe not 1,000, maybe like 700.
I mean, more than 1,000.
Say the words, damn it!
3,000 or 4,000.
Look. I think scale's gonna like hard to be like fully justified,
or maybe
but I think at the end of the day, it should be recognized that it's very possible to lose knowledge. And there are like probably tons of things that we kind of take for granted that we could just lose in less than a generation for a variety.
Do you know how to wave a shirt, right? Do you know how to
One
make
up to
the
no
exact
I up to no good
seams of,
said,
like, a
show me the
t-shirt
study,
or,
buddy.
like,
Show me the study, buddy.
I showed you the studies, bud.
I never implied
I showed
that
you the
sex
study,
changes.
buddy.
It doesn't.
I showed you the study, buddy.
No, you showed me grok.
I showed you the study, buddy.
You showed me
one?
Grok.
Hey, buddy! I showed you. Yeah, Grok. AI smarter than your dumb ass. Your sickle cell anemia, sick, lonely ass.
How many people know how to get seeds from a carrot? This used to be knowledge that a lot of people knew.
Bro.
Yeah, but that's the thing though. It's not a practical skill to those people. That's why that knowledge would be forgotten. I mean, within the Western Roman Empire, for example, after it fell, the reason that information was lost was largely because a lot of these people ended up becoming subsistence farmers. Because hey, we need food to live, and what does building aqueducts do for a farmer? How does that benefit them? What does knowing how to read benefit a farmer?
Well, the aqueducts might help them as it brings water to them.
No. For all intents and purposes, a farmer and his family are very unlikely to need an aqueduct for anything.
Well, look, it depends on if he's selling it. It depends if he's selling his stuff or not, right? But like, look, I think I get like there's a practical reason why these people might like not hold on to this knowledge. They might not learn this knowledge, but it might be the case that it's practical that they live in a society. Well, it might be practical if they live in a society that people have this knowledge to begin with, and it just seems
in a society. But
look, when Rome fell, like barbarians sacked the city.
With the collapse of a central governing figure, what I'm saying is that information is not practical to use. And I mean, the aqueducts alone, like that takes several people over the course of several months to build.
Isn't there like a big like
and people with specific skills are required to do that too.
But isn't there like a big like difference to like nowadays we have like so much like knowledge like spread like super far, right? We have like a lot of like records of like a lot of like knowledge. I think like it's a lot harder to eradicate like the knowledge that we have now than it was like I don't know like couple of hundred years back, right? Because not only do we have like all of like these records like multiplied all over the world, there's like walls to like preserve like that knowledge. Like we have like so much to preserve like our knowledge, like the information that we have. It's so hard to eradicate that. Like even if you would like nuke the whole fucking planet, the information like 2 or 3 the knowledge is still here, and it would just need like a couple of people. Sure, they would have to relearn a little bit, like
100 years, 200 years.
Yeah, but like you have like records of like
here's like an example.
Well, now we're getting the like laws of the universe and stuff.
So here's an example from recent history that I'm sure some people
about what happened.
That some people are aware of. So you got two ways of playing like games that are stuck on consoles, right? You either have emulation or what is more recently FPGA, right? FPGA is often just taking the translation of the typical circuitry involving, like, say, a circuit board, and more recently, PlayStation 1 disc, or like how a circuit board would interpret the data on the PlayStation disc and would actually go through the bump gates of that circuitry proper. So like saying like this knowledge will be lost is like I think is fairly like facetious, because even like say again, right, people who just do stuff casually, like, you know, like gaming and stuff, already have a vested curiosity to look up the research involving the complexity of, say, like PS1 and 64, and managing to interpret the circuitry of that into modern chipsets, very basic chipsets too.
Let's try it this way.
Oh no.
There is a really bad EMP from a solar wind, right? It affects the entire Earth. All electronics are done. All of a sudden, humanity gets together and realizes that it was not a good idea to store all the world's knowledge on computers, and then everybody just starts going back to books. Maybe somewhere, you know, and then let's say 500 years into the future, we have completely like stopped using computers, but we need to grab the old knowledge from like old hard drives because there's things that have been forgotten, and we can't do it because we no longer have the knowledge of, like, it was not taught these hex algorithms, and it's just lost to time. Totally possible. That everything I've just said is completely possible.
Not really.
No, not at all impossible. Come on.
Okay, so
you
if that
don't think
is
that we would be able
how-
to? Wait, you don't think that we have like defensive measures for like solar? Not like saying that we could block the solar rays or whatever, right? But we have ways to defend.
We have.
Let's just assume that it was really, really bad. Really bad.
I don't even.
Like
And
any
everybody on
protection
the
that
earth
we've
must
done
be, like,
was a
quadriplegic
complete waste
and
of
really
time.
stupid.
Well, look. I think like that's probably unrealistic. I think from my understanding, but like even if it just takes out, let's just imagine it takes out
Like
20%.
80%. Yeah, like
No,
that would be.
no, seriously. No, seriously. Let's think if it takes out 20% of electronics. Do we think we're losing something important? I vote probably yeah. Probably yeah.
Thank you.
We lose something that we don't even like. We don't know, and we have to like figure it out again. Even if we just knock out 20%, right? Like that's a huge number of all the electronics in the world, and we're not going to be committed to the idea that we're probably going to lose information. I think, like, come on.
So so you brought up an interesting number regarding 20%. So 20% of all the original Xboxes are actually dying from what is known as the clock capacitor death.
The clock.
If now let's just say, right, all the Xboxes die.
No.
Well, that's not really a big issue because we already have solutions like emulation.
We don't have emulation for Xboxes, actually.
20%.
We actually don't have emulation for Xboxes. We don't have Xbox emulators. Xbox One? No. Like the original Xbox? No. We have no emulators for that.
How much do you want to bet on that?
Am I wrong? Has there been an update on
Been
it?
one out for like 5 years.
Yes, there is an
Yes, there's
Xbox
one
One
called
emulator. There's also a 360 emulator, and there's also an OG Xbox emulator.
Wait,
There's
why
also
would we
Fat
not
Kid
have
for
an
it.
emulator for that? I don't understand.
Look
Like,
at
what
it.
would
Hold
be
on.
so hard about it?
It doesn't
Xbox
matter.
One,
Like,
Xbox
most of
One
their
emulators,
games
yeah.
are on like Microsoft
Look,
phones.
Look, how about this? How about
Most
this?
of their shit's
This is
in
actually an
PC.
easy response. For
Oh,
me,
cool.
right?
Yeah, I did not know
I'll
this.
Grant,
All right,
grant
sick.
You'll
This is cool.
probably like if I
Zemu
knocked
apparently
out,
is an emulator. Cool.
and to be like more than
Zemu,
that,
yeah.
we're
Cool, I
also
wanna
gonna be
play
like having to like
Blinks.
hit like actual video game copies and like the ability to emulate them in general. But like, it's still gonna be probably the case you're not gonna be able to get every possible Xbox game ever made, right? Like you're probably gonna lose some, yeah, and the overall like losing 20%.
So Greenpeace, Green Revolution, whatever your fucking name is, the entire
No F bombs,
argument.
please. Chill on the cursing.
So the entire argument of First Amendment is more or less blowing things out of proportion and expecting us just to roll over and accept like these ridiculous
I'm not
premises.
blowing things out of
that's like the
proportion.
main
I'm
thing.
simply pointing out that there have been times in history where we have lost knowledge and things aren't taught. Like, of course, it's totally possible that we lose the knowledge in the future. Why is that so difficult for you to grasp?
It's like
Because like nowadays, like there's like in the past like 100 years, we made like so many like efforts to like preserve like knowledge, right? That is going like
Well,
beyond.
yeah, because
books.
it's totally possible to lose it. Correct.
Well,
I
all
agree
those
with you.
all those servers,
here's the
servers
thing.
that they're on aren't gonna last forever
For
either,
books,
right? Like,
one sentence. I could
and hard drives will last about 100 years. If
This
you
is
don't
what I'm
use a hard
saying.
drive,
It's
it'll last,
like
like 50
we could totally like. Here's the problem, man.
It's
Like
filled with the
we can acknowledge, right, that in order to read this information, right, we need processors, right? It's fair to say that, right? How many people actually know how to build a processor? That's got to be a really tiny amount of people.
No, I see. That's why I have money, Minder.
Yeah,
I mean,
but so,
I'm
so
No,
the
I'm
thing is-
saying,
the
I'm
thing is,
saying,
the
like
people who
if
build
if
these
all of a sudden the people who are
processors-
making
Been taking the
processors
course.
disappear, now what?
the people so the thing is the people who build these processors know about like this exact situation and it's like potential of happening and they
These
put
people
fail
infallible.
safes in. They put things like, okay, worst possible case scenario, if all of our first 500 fail safes don't work, let's add 500 more just in case, right?
Well, I
There's
think
a
this is
billion
assuming.
trillion things that
This is
need to go wrong all within the same exact time frame. It's so unlikely that it shouldn't even be considered. There's not enough time in a million lifetimes of the universe for everything to go wrong in the way that you're describing it. It could go wrong.
I think these are assumptions. I think these are assumptions on the. You're making assumptions over the type of fail-safes that exist, and I'll be real. You can have all the fail-safes in the world, but if something happens that you didn't make a fail-safe for, then it fails, right? Like, I don't think these people are going to be capable of knowing all things that possible that could go wrong, or have the ability to tackle all the possible things that could go wrong. We're very fallible in this way. So, like, if we lose this information, which again, like, hard drives don't last forever, right? They need to maintain them. If they become in a scenario where they can't get the material to maintain them, even with that knowledge, those things die away. We just lose that information.
So then what we do after is they don't die away instantly. What we would do is, like, I don't know how this isn't computing. What we would do is we would get the hard drives, right? Well, we're going to walk through this really slow. Since they're dying slowly, which they could be dying, but they're dying slowly, we will be able to read what materials we are losing and the time frame in which we will no longer have them. We can see all those things, right? We can predict all those things.
You don't have access to the material to do this.
Hold on.
You don't have access to that.
No. Stop.
Something happened. You don't have access to the material to do this anymore.
We don't have access. We don't have access to read the materials on it or to read the hard drives anymore.
Material is not infinite.
What I posed as a hypothetical, Hydra, was like, say for like, if you understand like what is stored on your hard drive, it's basically just zeros and ones that ultimately just have like it is translated through an algorithm, a hex code, and then that hex code into like things that like can actually be understood, from characters to like colors to, you know, all of these things are translated in that way, and it requires a processor to do it. And so let's say, for example, if we lost the knowledge of like these algorithms, or like if the processors, like people forgot how to build processors and there was just no more processors, even assuming that we could read the microscopic zeros and ones, it would largely be incomprehensible, say 1,000 years into the future, when all of these algorithms have been lost to time.
I mean, you could technically actually do it, like reverse engineer it, because
it's possible, but I'm saying like the zeros and ones would just be zeros and ones. It would be a ridiculous.
Exactly, but
it would be impossible to figure it out, or almost impossible.
They are language. They are language, and we know we use the 8-bit thing, right? Like we know, like that wouldn't necessarily be
saying
lost,
we
right?
lose
it's
that.
Like it's an 8-bit thing.
I'm saying that's lost. We don't know if it's 8, 9, 10. We just don't remember, right?
I know. Let's say even we lose that, right? Like we lose the ability to know it was 8 bits. It will still be a language, and we will still be able to, you know, even if it would take us a long time.
Mind you, right?
It's like we could technically be able to decode it, because it is a language at the end of the day.
I mean, even in the concept of colors. So we have zeros and ones that then translate into a hexadecimal notation, which means 16 decimals to a single digit, that then translates into a 255 character slot for a 16 million color schema. Like, do you understand? If we did not have the books for that, that would be intensely difficult. And that's just translating a color, right? That would be insanely difficult if we did not have that prior knowledge.
Yes, but again, it's like you don't necessarily have to say, okay, this is a color or this is not a color. We would obviously take a lot of resources.
We wouldn't even have colors. We would just be seeing zeros and ones, is my point.
Well, obviously, that's what I'm saying. It's like
we wouldn't even be able to know that that's a color. We're just looking at zeros and ones and be like, this was the knowledge
you would do
of the ancients,
because we do this all the time.
We cannot read it anymore.
Yeah. But we do this all the time. It's like we constantly have like dead languages that we were able to kind of bring to life.
Well,
we especially if we see some things like repeating.
We couldn't even read hieroglyphs until we got the Rosetta Stone. Like hieroglyphs were incomprehensible until we got the Rosetta Stone, which translated into Greek, which is understood. The point that I'm making is like, that's one step of translation, right? And what I just mentioned regarding the zeros and ones, just for a color, that there are 3 individual steps. Right? It would be very, very, very hard to translate. What?
All right, so let's go back to this whole translation sort of argument, right? So let's just say that let's go back to like say the topic again, because we all know that game preservation is a big issue. Now now I'm sure that most of us are aware that the Xbox 360 is using a very unique architecture. It's not using x86. It's using its own architecture provided by IBM. And as a result, there is arguably going to be a lot of games. If let's assume on the premise that First Amendment is true, that a lot of Xbox 360 games are going to just disappear right at some point, because there's going to be no more Xbox 360 to play them. Correct?
I mean, there's already Xbox games.
No.
Wait, hold on.
There's
I'm thinking a lot more in depth with this, not just like,
not because they're incapable of being read. Don't play the games.
There's already like lots of games.
Let's try it this way. Let me try it this way. Something that is like within our lifetime. Okay, there were tons and tons and tons of .swf files or flash files all over the internet. In fact, huge portions of the internet was just flash. And then it stopped being supported. Okay? Now there are you will find very hard time finding an SWF file, and even if you do have an SWF file, you have to use an emulator to even like watch it. You can't watch it on a browser, right? Modern browsers don't support Flash, right? And Flash, the knowledge of Flash is being moved over to Adobe Animate. So the reality is that, say for example, the knowledge of ActionScript 2.0 is just not something that's taught anymore. And so what's going to happen is that we can already imagine less people know ActionScript 2.0 and less people even know what a freaking .swf even is than there was, I don't know, say 15 years ago. It's already happening within your lifetime that the knowledge will be forgotten.
Okay, hold on. So, Amanda, are you aware that there is a real-time Flash translation layer called Ruffles out there? Or
I'm aware. I'm saying that it is... like the aspect of making flashes, like the aspect of doing that, that's going to be gone. That will be forgotten, right? There will be less and less flashes available as hard drives slowly die off, as servers get decommissioned, as hard drives get decommissioned. There are already missing games, right, that were developed in Flash that are no longer accessible. Right? It's only a matter of time before all knowledge of Flash is just gone. It's not a hot take to think that.
So then you can
if you have a microscope though, you can just like look at it under the microscope and you can just figure out how it works. It's not that complicated.
We can apply.
You're not understanding my point. You're not getting it. If you think the way that you revive Flash is by looking at hard drives with a microscope, you and I are on completely different.
No, I'm saying circuits. Like you can look at circuits under a microscope.
Okay, but that's different. I'm not talking about circuit. I'm talking about like just Flash, just Flash alone, right? It is most people.
Yeah,
I guarantee you, a majority of people that are under 20 even knew what the heck a .swf even was. In fact, this is probably the first time they've even heard what an SWF is. SWF was one of the most common formats ever in, say, 2005. 2005! It wasn't that long ago. People don't know how to make a .swf anymore.
I mean, even back then, almost nobody knew.
No, dude, I knew, and so did tons and tons of computer kids in my school.
Okay, since we're ranting and raving, okay, so then this can easily be applicable to Xbox 360 games, correct? Yes, no?
Yeah, in theory, yes. Yeah.
Okay, so
this is applicable to any piece of technology that is not taught.
Okay, so what are your thoughts on the Sonic the Hedgehog recompilation project that actually made every Xbox 360 game playable on PC?
Sick, dude. That's great. I love that.
I mean, well, dude, you're just now being dismissive of something that is like completely antithetical to your argument. Like, you're saying that there's no solution.
So it's not antithetical. What it is possible that the knowledge gets saved, preserved, and passed on over time. But it is also possible that that knowledge is not saved, passed on, and moved on over time, but simply forgotten. We already have games completely gone from the Flash era. The internet of the Flash era can only even be accessed from the Wayback Machine. And guess what? The Wayback Machine didn't save the .swfs. It didn't. It's just not there.
Yeah. So like I'm like a little bit like lost here, like what are you like arguing for? Because like sure, I don't think anybody like disagrees that like some information is like lost, obviously. But like your initial argument is usually that, like there's this whole bod of like information, like everything, like so much will get lost. And then like it ends up saying, oh, like it's like this minor thing that will get lost.
I mean,
so
if
like
say
really...
for example, there's a giant societal collapse, huge portions of technology would just disappear. Like it would not surprise me that we would start looking at processors as like this was the brains of our forefathers, and it is like a magical artifact to them. That would not surprise me at all. Like 1,000 years into the future, 100%.
Okay, sure.
Yeah,
but
see,
I want to like ask you like a question, like so just like
inside of
to understand like where you're coming from.
Or
like imagine like most of like people nowadays, like they would just all die out because like whatever like cataclysmic event, like people would die, most hard drives would just like get eradicated, right? What do you think? How long would it take to like restore society like to the point where we are now? Like say like 10% of like all humans and like most of the hard drives, everything would get eradicated. How long would it?
This wouldn't happen.
Okay, if you want me to just be like brutally honest with you, because we have been pulling resources from the Carboniferous era, and we don't really have a viable alternative, say nuclear, this is our only jumping off point. And if we cannot make the transition off of non-renewable energy resources, we will never return back to what we are at now.
That's probably true. Like if society collapses, there's not even like
if we do not transition off of the non-renewable energy resource of oil,
I
right?
think that's just population.
Then we will never get the quality of living that we live today. Never. It will never happen.
Yeah, definitely. But
First Amendment, I have a question. So earlier you said
we got
that
a lot
like
of oil, though.
when decrypting like code and you use how many steps and like forms of process there is to deciphering a color, why don't we use Morse code as an example? In day-to-day communication, there's very few, if any, people who use Morse code anymore, right? We have other ways of communicating. We have other ways that we hold on. We have other ways that we've preserved Morse code, right? We have other ways because we know, right? Not only do we know that it's probably useful to have, but we know that if we need it again, we probably shouldn't only keep how to use Morse code in Morse code, right?
That's 100% wrong.
Well,
no,
I mean,
it's not 100% wrong.
I mean, you can't figure out encrypted stuff, but I mean, Morse code is easy to figure out because you just take the one-letter words, the two-letter words, and three-letter words, and you do like a linguistical, statistical analysis of it to figure out like what those words are. And then once you figure out a couple of letters,
I mean, it's literally one sheet, right? It's a single sheet, so it would be very easy to maintain that knowledge. But the algorithmic processes of transferring zeros and ones into something that is readable to a human, whole different realm of imagination.
Well, sure, it would be longer, but we
several steps. Like again, like I'm pointing out, like we couldn't translate. We couldn't translate hieroglyphs until we found the Rosetta Stone. If it were not for the Rosetta Stone, we would not be able to read hieroglyphs, right? And that's a single translation layer. You're asking for 3 translation layers, and that's just for the simplest color. right? Let alone all of the characters and everything that, and like the ridiculously complex encrypted processes that will, I mean, like, heck, could you imagine like if every single hard drive was encrypted? You're screwed. It's gone. It's gone. The data's gone.
You're not understanding the point that I made. The point that I made is not that it would be easy or easily accessible. The point that I made is that we've had something of similar, like, not say similar magnitude, but like similar, I guess, theme happen where there's a form of communication or a form of storing knowledge and information that has basically poofed out of existence. To the average person, it's gone, right? And most people don't even know Morse code. Kids today don't even know Morse code existed, right?
Okay.
So it's practically gone, but we have other ways we know to store the information in ways that wouldn't be taken out.
I'm a kid these days, and I can.
And yet we can fail.
This is
Look,
that's fine.
People copied scrolls, dude, so that they could avoid having lost this knowledge, and they still failed. There's probably things that can happen that humans can fail. And I think there's a very good thing to think about is that we could fail about these things. So we should try harder to not lose them, but we could still lose them.
The people that you're talking about, back when they wrote on scrolls to try to preserve that information, not only was it much more difficult to preserve information, but they also, the average intelligence was significantly lower than ours.
No, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think for like the average person.
Okay, look, it took a bunch of Sonic the Hedgehog nerds that know basic C++ to completely reverse engineer PowerPC coding and Xeno shaders to port a Xbox 360 game to PC.
Yeah, because most of that was just innovation. Not a lot of that was actually like
Fristas is saying Morse code is not the same as an entire programming language.
What I'm saying is that I'm not comparing the two things inherently. I'm comparing the situation of those two things practically being wiped from existence and how we would do those, or how we deal with that thing, right? While Morse code is not practiced normally now, I can still learn the entirety of Morse code. Hell, I could study it so good, I could be able to like memorize Shakespeare plays and write them all out in Morse code if I wanted to, because I have access to that knowledge, whether it be via the internet, whether it be via a book down at the library, whether it be via word of mouth, whether anything, right? We know these things. We know how to deal with these things disappearing. I know that one is a lot more complicated. The reason that I made the analogy between the two is because it's easier to construe a more complicated and complex situation like the one you're describing with something much simpler that we've already experienced.
All right.
Look, I think
here's what I want you to do.
Right?
Here's what I want you to do.
There's nothing that complicated.
This is a color. Without using ChatGPT, what is that color?
I can't tell you personally right now at this moment. I can look it up, or I can get a
you'd have to
code reading book and study how to read it.
Like when she.
Hold on. So I actually know how to. So this is actually based. This is simple arithmetic, right? The color is going to be. There is no color. Did you do that right, or?
I did do it right.
It has to be
I can try this again.
Take this binary number.
RGB color.
Take this binary number. Tell me the hex color and tell me what color that is.
Look, it's actually split into 5.
Yeah,
that is a binary number.
You're missing what you're missing.
Which can be converted into. Which can be converted into a hex color, which can then be an actual color. So tell me what color that is, right? And don't use ChatGPT. Don't use any, don't cheat, right?
This doesn't
read
prove
a book.
I'm going to take a wild guess. It's red.
Go ahead. You have the internet in front of you to explain binary, and then convert that binary into a character, and then get your hexadecimal notation into a hex code, in which case you can then find the color from that, right? You could do it, right? Don't use any automated systems to do it.
So really quick, tell me what this word means in Morse code. What's that word?
S, and then I don't know what that the next.
No, it's a word.
That's a word?
That's a word.
I don't know.
It means understood.
Okay.
See, it didn't really prove any point there, right? Because you could figure that out. I was able to figure it out, and I don't know Morse code.
Okay, I'm just pointing out, right, the steps to understanding this, right? This simple color is a lot more steps than just Morse code, right? It's one step, but the steps that I'm requiring you is that you need to take that,
like at least
turn it
30
into a
minutes to
hex
figure out what the color
character,
is.
right? Into a hexadecimal notation. And then once you have it in your hexadecimal notation, you can go ahead and get the hex code for the color.
Yeah, like I said, you literally just describe like a math process. You're saying
I get it, but I'm saying like if you're 1,000 years into the future, this is going to be incomprehensible to you.
Well, no, the problem is that I literally just took what you said and I distilled it down to what I have already said, right? I have said that we already have preservation of different math techniques that we have used prior in the past, and you have tried to move the goalposts and said, "Oh, all the calculus is going to disappear." Like what the hell is that?
Yeah, calculus is hard to understand. It would not surprise me that it's not taught one day, and then we forget the knowledge, and we have to spend hundreds of years relearning it. It required an extremely brilliant individual to even get to calculus by analyzing the stars, right? And that was one individual over the course of thousands of years. That is not something that is easy to just regain if it is lost.
No one said that it would be easy.
Maybe like that's the issue here, because like I feel like your assumption is like
I think you underestimate
all knowledge, like everything is lost.
I never
but
said
there's
that.
Still people alive.
Well, I mean, eventually everything will be lost to entropy, but that's beside the point.
Yeah, sure, okay.
And why the fuck are we arguing about this, right? We can just masturbate in glorious enthusiasm and just not worry about everything, right? Like this is like the most nonsensical argument that we can make here. Like, oh, well, we're going to lose everything, so why even bother, right?
I never said that. I never even said that.
He probably very much cares about keeping information intact. Why would you say that?
I just feel like I'm like confused about like what amount of information is lost and
like,
what amount of like people are dead.
That's the thing that infuriates me.
Wait, what argument is like? Look, I think all Amender is saying isn't like making an argument. He's pointing at something that he thinks it is a potential problem, and everyone who points at, oh, but look at all these nerds who are doing things to protect us against that, is just bolstering his point, because all those nerds who are doing this have the same concern Amender has.
Thank you.
The same concern.
Thank you. It's not just me. It's not just me.
I'm not really concerned about
No
this.
one said anything about there being concerns or issues with concerns, right? You can have as many concerns as you want. You can have a concern that you'll get like prostate cancer, but like the likelihood of that happening isn't that.
At some age, you should probably get tested each year for prostate cancer.
Yeah, that's a precaution. That's a precaution. Hold on. Let me finish. That's a precaution that you take, even though the likelihood of that happening, especially with modern day medicine and modern day understanding, the likelihood of you getting prostate cancer is pretty low, right? Or at least in any way that would be like harmful.
Colon cancer is rising though for our generation.
So you're missing the point that I'm making, right? So what you brought up by testing for prostate cancer, is a precaution, right? Which is the point that I've been making this entire time. So the reason why it would never happen, and especially the reason why if something of this magnitude were to start happening, it would not progress to the magnitude that you guys are saying, is because we have precautions that we take, and we have measures to take and things to enact out just in case something like that was happening, like prostate cancer, right? If somebody gets prostate cancer, we have medications that they can take that can slow the rate of which the cancer progresses. We have surgeries that we can do and that people can undergo that would potentially eliminate the cancer altogether.
I get it. Are there diseases that we're not aware about that can sneak up on people that we don't run tests for? The answer is going to be yes, and the answer I'm just going to say is this can still happen to these systems that we're talking about, right? And these people do have sophisticated systems. Some people have sophisticated systems to keep information going. I just think these can fail. These people can lose access to the resources that allow them to be able to do this. The server's not going to run forever if you don't get material to fix it. So I just I don't see how this defeats the whole point of information can just disappear.
How would we get out of material to fix it? It's basically a perpetual motor. The thing that you are, listen to me.
What?
The thing that you,
What's a perpetual motor?
I was gonna answer. If you stop saying what, I would love to answer you. Give me a second. So when you say, oh well, we might run out of materials, right? And then you also say right before that it's the rate at which these things are dying out is very slow, we would be able to detect we're running out of materials before the things actually die, and then utilizing those things that are dying, we would be able to find a way to replace the material that we're losing out on, and therefore replace the thing that is dying. Now, whether or not that material is more expensive, less accessible, or whatever problem you could bring up, you could say, okay, well, we might not make a bunch of them or the magnitude in which we make them right now, but we could make maybe the first supercomputer equivalent where it's just one of them and it's super, super expensive, right? And then we use that to read the code that we have now. We use that to take all the information that we have now and take it down.
Yeah, I think these are a lot of assumptions that you're going to have equivalence when you may not actually have something that's actually equivalent. And B, I don't even need to be arguing that all of Earth's resources are going to be tapped out. I can just say where you've decided to build these servers. There's geopolitical issues where you can't get the resources you need to fix them, and you're just SOL. Right? It has nothing to do necessarily with all of Earth's resources. And again, the very reason why these
I never said anything
the
about
very
all of
reason why these nerds build these fail safes, build these resources where there is information, is because they agree with Amender, by the way, that you can lose this knowledge. It is
it's a huge fear. It is a huge fear.
Guys. Yeah, it's a legitimate fear, right? It's why people copied scrolls, right? It's I just don't see how this is an actual argument against the Amender is saying. It seems to just be vindicating what he's saying.
No. Again, I have already said this. The problem is that he had made this hyperbolic hypothesis that just sounds incredulous to even to negotiate with, and that's the reason why everyone is up in arms about it, because of the insanity of it.
Yeah, it's slowly moving off the goalpost. That's what's happening in these debates, sadly.
I don't feel like I'm slowly moving my goalpost. It's the same argument.
Can I restate your initial claim, and you can tell me if that's correct? So you said it's all of our knowledge, most of our knowledge, easily lost.
Yeah.
Could be wiped down in an instant.
Yeah.
So. Okay, so then the argument that people brought up in me was so we have a lot of mechanisms, and we have a lot of storages to save the information, and we can rebuild.
Obviously we can.
Can I just
can all lose
10 more seconds, please, to finish this? So even if there was just a minimum amount of people being alive, we could recreate a lot of it. Sure, we could not recreate every computer game that ever existed. Sure, right? That's not the debate, I assume. But most of the basic knowledge we could recreate pretty quickly, right? So it's not that easy to wipe out the knowledge of humanity, right? It's and to give a comparison, for example, we had bottlenecks in human evolution. For example, I think it was around roughly 1 million years ago. I think a little bit less than 1 million years ago.
Give or take 900,000, 1 million years ago.
Yeah, but humans were reduced to I think around 1 to 2,000 humans alive, right? And if you look back nowadays, how much knowledge we have about that time and before that, the power of like recreating knowledge is crazy. It's crazy, right?
Well, this is slightly different.
If you have like
knowing when the bottleneck doesn't knowing when the bottleneck might be does not equate to the knowledge that those people had.
Yeah, sure. I think like in this instance it's like even better like for our argument because we already we make like storages where we save this information. Like people back in the day, they did not try to save information.
Can storages fail?
Yeah, sure, but like we have
in
like storages that are like
saying practically no.
They are made to like sustain like these.
I mean, things like this have been lost in the past.
And again, I have already mentioned this, right? Like
nobody
for
disagrees.
example,
Like information is getting lost.
Then we don't disagree. We don't disagree.
What about
but
the
we
time
do.
when Julius Caesar
Okay, so then
burnt
what are you disagreeing
Alexandria
with?
Library?
Because so
yeah, we didn't lose all of our information. We didn't even lose half the information that was in there.
I'm not making
the
an
information
argument
that we
that
lost
all the
was
information.
No, I'm not talking to you, Amender. He asked me about the burning down of the library of
Alexandria.
It's right there, Alexandria.
He made.
Right. So we didn't lose even half the information that was in there. The only information that we lost was scholarly works that we just got back like shortly after. The idea of like, oh, would we be thousands and thousands of years into the future if that library didn't burn down? No, we wouldn't, because most of the information that was in there was either rewritten shortly after by the same people who wrote it before, or it was studied to an extent that it was already known commonly.
Okay. Yeah, but also what about Greek fire? You know the Greek fire, right? That would pretty much burn forever. It was used as a weapon.
We're actually not even aware of everything that we lost. Like, that's kind of the problem. It's like there's certain things where it's like it would just be lost to time, and we just don't have any knowledge of that information. It's just gone.
Yeah, then it's not vitally important.
You don't know that. We actually have no indication that could or could not be like.
How long did it take us? How long did it take us to redo Roman concrete? I thought they used it a lot.
Well, that was actually like a misnomer. They didn't really. So Roman concrete was actually inferior to the actual concrete stuff that they use. Like, there's a reason why that once when we created it, we realized as oh.
Yes.
But no one wanted to start using it after
I'm not
a
sure
while.
how to say it, but it's that's just called a backwards or a hindsight fallacy or whatever. It's just because somebody survives, you think they knew what they were doing, right? Just because these structures, it's just concrete, survived for longer times, it doesn't mean that they knew it and they did it because they knew it would survive for hundreds or thousands of years.
Well, that's not the point that's being made, right? And I just looked this up. I'm seeing things that are saying Roman concrete was in widespread use at about 150 BC. So I don't know if I'm going to be necessarily agreeing just because you said that it wasn't very much used. But the point is that this was something that they did use, that they did find important, and that information was lost. Whether they knew that it would last for 1,000 years isn't relevant. All that's relevant is that it's something that's important to them because it's in widespread use at 150 BC, at least according to Wikipedia. And this seems to be, problematic if we're going to say we can't lose important things. Seemingly, these people did think this was important, and it was lost.
Okay, so, all right, hold on. So, I want to give everybody kind of a last word, just final thoughts, final conclusions, and we're going to wrap up the show. And I'm going to stop the stream. And honestly, I think a video on this particular topic is interesting. What do you guys think?
I think so.
Cool. All right. So
I think the call was pretty tame compared to most calls. It was good.
Yeah. Go ahead and provide your last thoughts if you haven't already provided them, and we'll go from there. I'll provide edits and everything.
Is very tasty.
Well, I just think the substance of the argument wasn't good. Right. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
As the last word, I would like to say carbonara.
Nice. Yummy.
Okay, so my last words would be carbonara.
Yeah, my last words will also be carbonara.
Yes.
All right, was that it? We're all done. Everybody said carbonara.
No.
All right, what do you got?
I guess pie. Really
All right.
boring.
I will say delicious pork pho. There you go.
Yeah.
All right, that's it. That's it, guys. All right, thank y'all for joining me. If you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. I'm very tiny. I just hit 500 subs. I just applied for the super chat option, so hopefully next stream we will have that ready to go. I appreciate y'all very much. Thank you.
I don't support eBay.
Carbonara.